And now to the main event. Jim Rodgers is the director of our school since its inception, probably 22, 23 years. He's going to show us how to make what he calls a transitional vessel. Jim?
Well, first of all, thank you all for inviting me back for my annual presentation. I kind of do this every year. I'll keep doing it as long as you want me to, and as long as I'm able. So, thank you. I want to say something off the record a little bit first. If you came in today, you noticed above the door there's a sign, and the officers of Bay Area Woodturners and the instructors and other people who are involved got together and decided that they wanted to rename the room. I always called it the BAWA Woodturning Center just because I wanted to give it a name. Room 108 doesn't sound very sexy. And they decided that they wanted to relabel it. And of course that needs management approval and it needs the district's approval. And so we have all the way from Victoria Abade, who's my boss, all the way down. Everybody agreed to do that. And I appreciate the award. I appreciate the support. I didn't do this. It's me and a bunch of dedicated people who put a lot of personal hours in teaching, preparing for classes, managing the room, setting up the AV stuff, creating projects, and so on. It's just a huge amount of work. What I get to do is to give everybody a phone call once a semester and say, you got your class schedule for next semester turned in yet? And when we're short of stuff, I said, did you get that stuff ordered? So I'm not doing much work anymore, but I do appreciate the support of the club and of the staff. And the honor was very special. I appreciate that. Well, what we're going to do is this. Do we have a picture here? It's not on the screen. Can't make it work. Okay. Okay, AV stuff being AV stuff, it's like the weather, you can't control it. This is what I'm going to create. I've been making these for a long time, and I think it became a part of my process when I found I had more scrap than I did good wood. So this is the one that was at the auction at Christmas time. So let me show you the pieces. I want the camera on this so we can take a look at what all goes into this thing. I don't see it.
No, you can't.
You can't?
It's not going through the switcher.
Never mind.
Sorry.
Well, there's good news and bad news in turning these transitional vessels. The bad news first is there's a lot of steps involved. The good news is there's no way to avoid doing them in the right order. So it's going to always pull you right back again. But basically all I'm doing, taking little pieces of wood, this would be a base, some veneers, some really nice looking stuff, whatever I can find. This happens to be a piece of maple burl. More veneers. And the only thing that's difficult to do is make the segmented ring. And I'll show you how to do that. And then, look at here. More veneers. More of the wood. And then something for a top. So I'm going to take you through all the steps of doing this. So basically, that's a whole project. The ring I showed you in the center of this one actually was cored out of another ring I'd already made. So making the ring is a little difficult, a little tricky. But once you made one, I probably can get 3 or 4 vessels out of the same piece without having to make another ring. So I only got to do it every so often. So part of the stuff I can't show you here because it's got to be done on the saw and there's glue steps and all that kind of stuff. So what I did, put a little presentation together, which I can show up on the screen, and I'll take you through the things that I can't go up on the stage and do. This is the stuff that happened before I got here. So let's go through this. Welcome to Turning Transitional Vessels. This is a demonstration I've done a number of times, a number of locations, because I really enjoy making these kind of vessels. Generally, I'm working with scrap, small pieces of wood, and I want to take you through the process because I think maybe it could be interesting for you also. So I started this whole thing by just getting into segmented turning in general. I started making feature ring and decorative rings for vessels, and as I got better I began to add more components and making it a little bit better. But the problem was I ended up with all the scrap, and with all that scrap I needed to do stuff, so I started making smaller pieces. I began to add more interesting designs, shall we say. Use a lot of pen blanks, a lot of scrap wood, and so that's what really got me into doing what we now call transitional vessels, which is, as you can see, typically it's a piece of burl wood for the body and some small pieces of wood to create decorative feature rings or necks, possibly even a small foot. Well, before we get started, it's important to take a look at some of the basics. There's a few little pieces of math, not much, but I got to know how big to cut the pieces in order to make a vessel the size I want. So let's start off with this. The circumference of the vessel divided by the number of pieces I want to cut the ring into, or the pie-shaped pieces, gives me what I call the segment edge length, what I end up going to the table saw and actually cutting. Well, let's do a quick example. Let's make a vessel that's about 3 inches in diameter, and I'm going to cut it into 12 segments, and I'm going to add some 1/8 inch spacers. So let's look at the math here. So diameter, which I want to be 3 inches, times 3.14, which is pi, that gives me that circumference, about 9.5 inches roughly. I'm going to cut it into 12 pieces, so I divide that by 12. And that's not it yet, because I have to add, or actually subtract, the 1/8 inch for the spacer. So it ends up creating a segment edge length about 5/8 of an inch, roughly. So we got the math we need. Well, what made segmented turning much, much simpler was a few years ago, a man by the name of Jerry Bennett created what he called the wedgie sled, which is a sled with 2 fences. And the bottom fence, you'd cut one side of the segment. The top fence, you'd cut the opposite side of the same segment. And what this particular device did was eliminate a lot of the setup and calibration errors that led to imprecise segments. In other words, when I put the pieces together, no light shows, they all fit perfectly. That's terrific when we can do that. Well, Jerry had also a little bit of business on the side. He made what he called wedgies, which are little pieces of wood that go between the fences that will establish the exact angle you need for the number of pie-shaped pieces in your project. This wedgie here says 24, which means it's going to allow you to cut 24 segments at an included angle, in this case of 15 degrees. If you want to buy them, fine. I also find that I'm only making rings that have 12 segments. So I was able to go to the hardware store, not the hardware store, the office supply store, and buy what I call a drafting triangle, which is 30, 60, 90 degrees. There's my included angle, 30 degrees, exactly what I need for 12 segments. Works fine. If you want more information, you can go to sageasy.com and find videos on how to build the sled, how it's used, a bunch of helpful information. So it's a source that you might want to refer to. Well, that's not the way I did it. I took his concept and I adapted it to my own piece, and I made a segment cutting sled that looks very much like it, but this is a miniature version. Each of the faces of this acrylic sled is covered with a piece of sandpaper, which prevent things from sliding. I made a stop, which gives me the opportunity to set the dimensions just with the set of calipers, just literally that quickly. So that's what I end up using for my segment work. Well, what I do is build the feature ring first. Before I even consider putting the vessel together, I build that feature ring. The reason is they don't always come out exactly the dimensions you expect. And I can always fit the body wood to the feature ring once it's completed. So, how do I do that? Well, I'm using wood that I got from a pen maker, and what he's done is sold me his cutoffs that have been dyed and stabilized the way I want. As you can see, they're kind of ugly looking. They're too short to sell as pen blanks, and he converts them for me and into the collars that I particularly like. Ugly looking stuff. But one of my major tools that I have to have is a 12-inch disc sander. And it's got to be perfectly set. I got to check the 90-degree angle between the plate and the sanding disc. So I'll clean these pieces up. I'm going to get them nice and square. So I'm finding the flattest edge, not always flat, and truing up one edge. As soon as I get it trued up, I'll turn it downward, and it will then become the reference, and I'll do a face at 90 degrees to that. As soon as that face is done, I'll turn the piece around and do the opposite face, and that gives me 3 sides, and one more rotation, and I can get the 4th side nice square. So this is what the pieces end up looking like. Not so bad once they're kind of cleaned up. And this is a blue box elder burl that I'm using. So I'm going to cut the segments for my piece here, and I said I need about 1/4 of an inch. So I'll set it at 250 thousandths, close anyway. And simply by locking the stop down like that, we're ready to go. And here's my fence and my table saw set up with a 0 clearance insert. There's dust collection on the bottom. But it doesn't catch it all because of the 0 clearance doesn't allow all the dust to go down where I'd like it to go. So you saw I cut the first edge. Now without rotating the piece, I cut the second edge. Pick up the piece, put it back to the first fence, and there's the second piece, and so on. But do not rotate. Hold it tightly against the fence and snugly against the stop, and we'll get the pieces as accurate as we possibly can. I'll do this for 12 pieces, and then we'll move on. Now there's the last of the 12 getting cut. As soon as the blade stops, I'll pick them all up and go to the bench. I need to be sure that they do fit properly. I've been pretty successful with what I do, but every time I'll assemble the 12 segments, I'll put a rubber band around them. And I'll hold them up to a bright light, and my idea is to be sure that I do not see any light leaking through. If it does, I then have to go and do a little manual work with some sandpaper until they do fit properly. But once they fit, I'm ready to go on to do the spacers. And I picked up a different color, a contrasting color, and I've got to go back and do precisely the same thing again. I've got to get it square, all 4 faces. And as soon as that's all done, we're ready to go cut the spacers. Stop this sander, get over to the table saw here. Now I'm going to set it up, I want about 1/8 of an inch, and you'll see I'm going to set it to 125 thousandths, lock it, set it to 1/8, and I can't use this fence. I've got to create another fence. So I have built another sled, and this sled is designed for cutting only the spacers. It's dead square, has sandpaper on the face just like the other one did. And you notice I wasn't particularly happy with 1/8 inch. I thought it was a little thick, so I moved it down just a little bit. So again, we're not quite sure what the diameter of this ring is going to come out until we get all the pieces together. So there's my spacer blank. I'm going to clean up one edge. And once that is done, like cutting a jelly roll, I'm going to slice off 12 little pieces. that simple. Once that's done, get the last piece cut. Blade stops turning. Pick them up. Now I'm going to inspect each of the pieces because sometimes I get a little chip on one corner. The blade doesn't cut cleanly for that very last corner, so I always have to make sure that they are nice and square. So I'll go assemble my piece, put the 12 little spacers in location. I should still be true only from the standpoint that everything has been cut square. The ring was okay in the beginning. It should still continue to be okay now. So there it is. I get a rubber band around it to keep it together. Straighten it up a little bit. Good enough. So now I need to make the spacers. I'm going to put the spacers separated from the other pieces with more veneers. And the veneers tend to sharpen up the color contrast. So here's how I cut my veneer. I'm going to use black simply between each of these. And I'm using a piece of steel as a background and a piece of steel as a straight edge. And I'm using one of the segments to measure how wide that piece needs to be. And to cut it, I'm just simply going to use an old box scraper. I've resharpened the blade a couple of times. Cutting against the steel dulls it real fast, of course. And a couple of passes along the grain. Now, from the bottom of your screen to the top is the direction of the grain of this piece of veneer is going. And it's just that easy to cut myself a strip that's going to be the right width. And because I'm going to need 12 spacers, that means I need 24 pieces of veneer, one on each side. So just to be safe, it's always good to cut a lot of extra ones. And I'll just use the piece to line it up. Sometimes putting two pieces in is even more helpful. We'll get those cut. I got a whole bunch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pencil mark down the face of each one in the direction of the grain. I want to be sure when I assemble the ring that the grain of the veneer is going vertically. I don't want any end grain showing in the project. So in order to be sure of that, I've put the pencil line to indicate the direction of the grain so I don't get confused when I'm starting to put the thing together. I'm going to use one of the segments simply to mark off how wide each piece needs to be cut, and I'll pencil mark that a few times. And as you can see, I'm making a lot of extra pieces just because it's easy to do, and if I lose or break one, not a big deal. I went to Sears many years ago and bought a pair of clippers that will cut square like a guillotine. This is like a knife against an anvil. I'm not going to tear up these little pieces of wood with a pair of scissors. I'm going to cut them nice and cleanly. And it's just that simple. I think they still sell them. I don't know what name they have, but they do work very well and specifically for these kind of cuts. There's the pieces. So I'm going to start putting the veneers in place. Catch my mistake right there. I put two veneers in location one. And I'm going to take the other one out. Trust me that after the video is made, I found a mistake and took that extra one out. And we go all the way around, put the veneers in place. And can you imagine gluing all this stuff over with the yellow glue, how slippery all these surfaces would be? It was a problem for a long time. So we get it all lined up here. I use a rubber band. I'll put it around twice once I get it all squared up and get all these pieces pushed into the right place. I've got a solution to that glue up problem that I was mentioning. I'll show you. You may get a clue from looking at what I'm doing. I'm going to use the paste wax initially. What I'm going to do is wax the surface that I'm working on. Let's clear the deck. And by waxing it, what it's going to allow me to do is to make sure nothing sticks. A little extra wax. Yeah. Now here's the secret. Instead of using my yellow glue, as I do on the rest of the project, I'm going to use thin CA glue. And what I'm doing is drizzling that into each area. It's soaking into the end grain of the veneers. It's soaking down between all of the butted edges. And it soaks pretty completely. It has to be thin because I need it to bleed in there nicely. Just like that. I will turn the piece over, and I will do it again from the back side. You can see that a lot of it's soaked through already, but just flood it. And I never had to move the pieces once I had the rubber band around. And I find the rubber band actually gets stuck too. And when I clean up this on the disc sander or with my tools, I eventually cut the rubber band off, either at the sander or with a lathe tool. So, there we go. It does stick a little bit sometimes. I don't need it all cleaned up, but I do need the back surface cleaned because I'm going to glue it to something eventually. And to do that, I need a nice clean surface. So let's get that surface nice and clean. Dust collector helps a lot in this situation. And once we have this all cleaned up here, you'll see that I have one face that is nice and sandable and ready to glue. Okay. Now I want to cut the components for the body, and I'm going to cut them to match the ring. So I've got to decide on how tall the vessel is going to be. Once I figure that out, I'm going to cut the piece of wood so that about 2/3 of what I cut will be the base portion below the ring, and 1/3 will go above the ring, and that'll give me the rest of it. And then I'll cut a matching or a contrasting piece of wood that'll be actually the foot or the base. So let's go to the bandsaw. And I'm using a piece of camphor wood here to square up one edge. It was pretty rough when I got it. And once that edge is square, I'm going to just start basically laying out the piece. I could put it up horizontally. I could put it up vertically. I'm just deciding where the piece is going to go. And I'm going to cut the base portion off. It's just a rough cut. And so now I have the base, I've got a ring, and that top piece will eventually get recut to the right dimension. Well, the foot of the piece is going to be cut out of a piece of quarter sawn walnut in this case. You can see the vertical grain on it. It's a pretty thick piece, but I'm making more than one vessel for this demonstration, so I'm going to cut enough material. I can do 2 feet for this and the next vessel both at the same time. So those are kind of sliced up. Now I'll take it and I'll go to the saw and I'll split it. And it gives me foot 1, foot 2. So let's put the pieces together. I do the stack up thing all the time. So I'm going to start off with putting it together. But I need some separations too. I need some more color. Now I buy veneer in all sorts of different colors, and I've been getting most of it from Amazon anymore. There are some companies that sell fletched matched veneers in different color. Fletched matched meaning the slices all have come off the tree in sequential order for grain match. Doesn't matter for me because I'm only looking at the edges of these pieces when I get done. So between the base and the bottom of the camphor veneer, I want 2 slices of the black. I want something a little thicker. So there's the base. Stack it up, 2 pieces. That one's done. So now I want to isolate the feature ring. And I've decided I'm going to use 2 slices of red with a slice of white in between. So I'm just going to mark it out. Take my felt marker, and I can actually cut this with the scissors. This works just fine. So lay out 4 pieces of red, 2 for the top, 2 for the bottom. Trim them up a little bit. And now I go to the white that go in between. If you look at this piece of white, you can see some nice grain pattern on the face of this. That's kind of too bad in a way, because you're never going to see that. It's just going to be a piece of white. So I cut them off, trim them up, and in essence now I'll put my pieces back in order again. Red, white, red. It's going to go there. The ring, after I cut it, will fit there. And now I'll put the next stack there. The only thing I need now is something for the neck, and I just picked another piece of unknown wood in this case. It needs to be separated, so a little piece of black from my trimming pile. And I've got all the pieces that I need now. So I've shown you all the work that couldn't be done in the live demonstration. So let's finish this thing off in a minute, and by going to the lathe and doing it. I want to show you some resources first. If you go to Bay Area Woodturners website, you will find the video of this whole presentation there, and you can review it again at your own leisure. My website contains a lot of information on various things about segmented turning. There are 3 books that I do recommend. Wood Turning with Ray Allen is an older book, but it shows a lot of Ray Allen's original plans, but it also shows how he cut all the little pieces and created those designs. Kind of cool to be able to see what the steps were. This kind of work, these transitional vessels and other aspects of segmented turning are all covered in my book, The Fundamentals. And Malcolm Tibbetts takes a different look at it in his book, The Art of Segmented Turning. So these are the 3, I think, key books that you might want to be interested in if segmented turning is where you want to go. So let's go to the lathe and make this vessel. So let me move up front. Okay, what I did before I started, I'm doing everything on face plates. That's my normal way to do things. The reason is I'm on and off the lathe with the components many times, and re-registering is important. If I had it in the chuck, took it out of the chuck and put it back in, I'll never get perfect registration. Chucks are not that accurate. So faceplate's the only accurate way to do it. This is steel faceplate. I use a lot of aluminum faceplates because they're small projects. That's just fine. They're cheaper. It doesn't matter. This is maple. It's screwed onto the faceplate. I pre-drilled the holes and then screwed it on. Why did I pre-drill it? I want that garbage out of the holes so my screw bites in smoothly, and that the detritus from the screwing doesn't force the faceplate away from the face of the wood. I want it to sit nice and flat. So I've opened up the holes and then drilled. And right before we started, I went ahead and mounted the top. So I'm going to build a top assembly, and I'm going to build a bottom assembly. And at some point, hopefully they'll come together. Okay, so this is the ring I put together. You can see right here, it's 12 segments. I have a little red veneer in between each one of these. I think it'll be fairly attractive. I'm not going to be able to work on that very well. One reason is I can't get to it. There's too much wood in the way. So let me turn this down a little bit here. My tendency is to kind of make these things cone-shaped. And I'm using the robust rest, the little short one, which is all I ever need. I don't need any long rest. Long rest actually a problem. They're just too big. So we're clear. Speed is down to 0 because I don't know where it was before. Okay, now I mounted it. I didn't get it really centered. I could see that. Doesn't matter. We'll fix that. Most of my tools, I use a 3/8 bowl gouge for 90% of the work. I have a couple of round nose scrapers that I will use at certain points when I'm cleaning up the inside and doing some hollowing. I'll probably finish things off with a lot of 80 grit sandpaper. Not only just because I can sand it down, I can correct shape with 80 grit. And when I have two surfaces come together that are not quite smooth, the sandpaper tends to round and smooth those edges out. So really, it is a cutting tool for me. Okay, let's just clean this up. It's vibrating a little bit. Well, that part's done. I want access to my piece. Know where the screws are. It's very helpful to know where the screws are. Now that gives me access to cleaning this thing up because it's not perfectly lined. Not a big deal. I'm done. So all I want to do is get everything aligned. And the next thing to do is to glue the top piece on. And while we were coming in this morning, I took the top piece, marked its center, went over to the disc sander here and made sure this side was dead flat. I don't know that the side here is dead flat yet. So I've got to work on. Terrific. I make sure that the other side is dead flat. So what I'm going to do here is clean this up. Thank you for getting that for me, Rick. Let's see how close are we. Oh no, it's not flat. It's way off. I'm above center. I could scrape or cut. I'm going to just scrape because there's very little. If you can't get them flat, cup the inside a little bit, not the outside.
And Jim, were you talking about coring those rings too?
I will, yes. I'm going to do that. So this is another one of my tools, a piece of 80 grit sandpaper on a piece of wood. Very important. Because every time I do something before I glue, I know that's dead flat. So because I did not bring, thank you, all the veneers I wanted, I'm going to put the top on without a veneer. Now I know where the center is. I want to mark it. Down? Oh. See, it showed me I don't use this lathe. Well, now I have a mark. Know exactly where that's going to go. Now, every time I glue something with veneers, I always clamp for a while. Did it plug itself up already? It did. This is that new speed set, and it did. Yeah. Okay, good enough. Remember to close it. Now, if I'm going to glue it and leave it here, I always put something down. Oh, I can leave it down. And I have loose clamped. Going to rotate it. That's to make sure the glue spread a little bit. I'm done. Now, if I was going to leave this for a while, I need to keep it in the press. I got to keep some pressure on it. I want to go ahead. I can't leave it on the lathe. It's tying me up a little bit. So I use my press. I have two of these, two different sizes. I got a great big one, which I never use, like the one we have a great big one here in the back of the classroom. Never use it. But what we'll do, oh great.
Do you have that press?
We'll put it in the press. Veneers will absorb the moisture from the glue, and they will deform, they'll warp, they'll bend, they'll do all sorts of weird stuff. So if I can do this, can I go down another notch? Yeah, I can. Okay, that's in a press, and that's got enough pressure on it, it frees me up to be able to go back to the lathe and work on the next component. I'll set it over here on the side. Okay, so I've glued the bottom on. As you can see, it's just on a faceplate, just like the one I had. I have a base on here, a piece of veneer, and a piece of this camphor. And what I now need to do, I need to get a ring in here. This one's I've already split, but you'll see how I did that in a minute. And before that, I have red, white, red veneer that needs to go in with it, like this. So, 2 through 3 I'm going to do. There's a possibility that this half ring, because I've already sliced it this way, I can core it out and get another piece out of it. But to do that, I need to be sure it's free so it'll fly out and not get glued to this. So I'm going to get this flat and get it prepared for coring. Don't need this anymore. I'll just set this stuff aside. I don't use this lathe much at all, so I got to remember on is down, off is up. So let's see how it looks. Turn the speed down a little bit here. Oh yeah, it needs a lot of work. That's okay. It's about 1/16 of an inch out. I can also get that edge trued up, and for me to do that, I prefer to have the tailstock involved for additional support. And now I'm turning between centers, and this is a pretty safe cut. This also brings it into balance. Now I know this all has to come down eventually. I'm not particularly concerned about shape at all right now. I'm just getting mass out of the way. Okay, so far so good. But I know I want to glue. So I've got this relatively flat, but I want to dish it out. Let me stop for a second so you can see what I'm going to do here. I know that this diameter is almost perfect, but I only need to hold the outer 1/4 of an inch, because the inner portion is going to get turned away. So let's create something that'll do that. I'm going to dish this out a little bit. That almost is enough. All this has to come out eventually anyway, but I'm just trying to emphasize so you can see. So now the only place it's going to glue is to the small edge. Anything inside of there, when I use a parting tool to take it out, is going to fly free. So that's the whole point of this. Let's just recheck. Not this. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Huh. It may be the vacuum stuff that's there. Could be things that are hanging around. I don't know. It's a vacuum attachment hanging out here. Done. Now, I'm going to glue this piece on. I'm going to need my press back in a minute. So that's good enough. Just set that aside. That's good. That's that speed set stuff. It's good shape. So now I want to glue this ring on, and I've got a problem. I've got a little chipping going on here, but it doesn't matter for the demo. If I come in here with a cone, I'm going to bust right through that veneer. It's okay, doesn't matter. So I need some sort of a cone to center this. Okay, this is a one-way live center system. And the components I need for that is, it comes with a small cone, comes with a bullnose cone that can be used outside or inside, either direction. And as an accessory, you gotta have one of these. This screws onto here and allows me to be able to screw on something that has a 1 1/4 by 8 thread and have it rotate. In this case, I'm gonna reverse pieces a lot. So you almost always need these adapters, which are sold separately. Now, this is a one-way. Robust has a similar system. Jet has a similar system. Maybe some others on the market too, but those are the three major ones. So one-way was the one that came out with the concept initially. So I need some way to line this ring up. That cone's too big. This cone's just right. So I'm going to mount that. Triple sets of bearings in here. In order to get this screwed on, I've got to lock the bearings down. And now I have to set up to do some gluing. So we're using speed set. Now I'm only going to glue, I don't mind gluing all this together, but I only want to glue on this one edge here. So let's, come on stuff. Speedy Gonzalez is too fast.
$1 million for anybody who can come up with an ideal, open and shut.
Yeah, I don't like any of them. They never work that good.
Do you need to glue the veneer on?
I do. So the first thing is level 1. Two. Come on, just one. 2. So, can you see the grain in that? Not very well. It's gorgeous stuff. Too bad. It's going to disappear. You can also see them beginning to warp a little bit already. And now I'm going to glue it to the ring. Now this ring has already been separated from another ring. Ooh. We may glue it to the floor. Crunch, crunch, crunch. But that gets me aligned. And now I need to put it into, set these aside for later. Thank you. Back to here. This one absolutely, because of the veneers, needs to go into a press. See why? Ooh. Well, I messed that side up. So what do? Glue the other side, which is also clean. In some cases I do. In this case I didn't have the chance. This is half, those wood screws, you got the 2 cranks and the 2 pieces of wood. This is half of one, so this one works counterclockwise. I have another one that works clockwise. And we'll go here. Counterclockwise is down. Doesn't matter. I just want downward pressure. Eh. Yeah, it's fine. What's not fine is all the veneers are all screwed around, but I don't care. So lefty tighty, righty loosey in this case. So that guy's done. And time passes. And this is what I would have started with. I'm going backwards. Here's that ring I glued up on the camera. I've got one side flat. I've got the veneers inserted, and I've got a full ring mounted onto the base of this particular piece. But I don't want all that. It's way too much stuff. Now when I part this off, I want to use this side. But I need a good dead flat surface here so I have the ability to glue it onto something else. So I'm going to flatten this thing and make it perfect in anticipation of the next project. I don't need the tailstock, but I am going to try to get rid of. First of all, I'm going to make this thing balanced and round. Yeah, it's off a little bit. By the way, I left the rubber bands on when I glued that up. You can't get them off. But when you go to the disc sander, the rubber sands away just fine, and it cleans up your disc sander at the same time. Okay, a little. This piece is really hard. A lot of glue, a lot of plasticizers. Just ran that down the side because it's not quite true. Now, that's a long way from where I want to be, but I don't care. I want to retrieve the ring. That's what I'm after right now. So let's get this side so it's gluable on the next project. That's just a scrape. I want to see where I am. It's not looking too bad. A little more RPMs. Still feel a little bump in there. I keep wanting to grab it and slow it down. It doesn't work. It's this one spacer here is just a smidge low. I can feel it. I can't see it, but I know it's a little low. So one more cut. And I need to flatten that. How's my edge? Good. I've done this enough that getting the side reasonably flat, I'm kind of used to doing that. .80 grit sandpaper is put on with a little bit of rubber cement. Now that side is good enough to work onto another project. So this is prepared for doing something else. I know that I'm going to cut it in half, and half of it stays here. I know that after I cut it in half, I can core it and take another piece out of here for a smaller one. So in essence, there's 4 vessels sitting right here with one glue up. So now I need to the outside's not perfect, but I don't care. That'll get handled when we finish the vessel. So now I need to part that off. And so I'm going to turn this around.
Part it before you core it?
Yeah. I'm going to give it some support. And now I need to get a special parting tool. This was an industrial hacksaw blade. You can buy them from any of the metalworking dealers, MSC, KVC, any of these guys. They're high-speed steel. You can get them in every width, very thicknesses. This is less than a 16th. I don't know what the thickness is. 50, 60 thousandths, something like that. I cut it in half, and I ground all the teeth off. So I have a high-speed steel parting tool that's in this plane right here, very stiff. And this curve is the curve of my 8-inch grinder wheel. So sharpening is just touching it to the wheel. But this is high speed, so this is what I'm going to part it off with. Now I got the cone in here, so when I go all the way through, it's not going to go flying. It's going to sit there and be captured. What the plan is anyway. Now that's this vibrating against that, and it's not tight, and I don't care. I know it's not tight. Now I've got to decide how wide I want this band to be. Like with all parting tools, overlapping cuts. That's the first one. Second cut. Almost through. Okay. Don't have to worry to catch it. It's been caught. So there's 2 more projects. Maybe. Now, this part here needs to get flattened because I'm going to glue it on something, and I can core it. I'm going to flatten it before I core it so I can have a good surface on this inner piece to build another project with. So flattening is next. Tailstock's out of the way. Hope this encourages you to do stuff like this because it's really fun. Once you got that ring built, it's just simply a matter of deciding. It's more artistic than anything else. You're just working on design. I didn't cut perfectly straight. Yeah, normal. One of the things I forgot to bring is I have on a magnet sitting right here on the tailstock of my lathe a square. But I don't have a square. But anything with a straight edge works just fine. And I'm trying to check to see how flat am I. Good. So that side's good enough to sand. Daggone thing doesn't move very good. We need a little WD-40 up here, silicone spray one of these days. Clean it up. Now, this surface here can be glued, but I now want to core it. So let's get the tailstock out of the way. Gouge out of the way. I want to be at center line. I want just a little bit taller. Now the other thing about if you keep this tool rest really close, well, not that close, when it comes loose, it won't fly because there's no place for it to go. And I'm looking for less than 1/4 of an inch wall thickness. 2 cuts. I know when I'm through it. Because I'll start seeing red and white coming through. There, I'm into the veneer. Here's the next project. Now, if you look at this piece, we pass it around, you'll feel that this veneer is really ripply. I mean, this is no good. I can't glue this in because the surface is so bad. It wasn't supported in here. So this kind of illustrates why you need pressure when you're gluing on veneers. You want to. Anyway, the bottom is done, other than hollowing out. And I'm not going to hollow it to fit that shape. I'm going to hollow a kind of a V-shaped bottom. And the reason I do that is as I decide to reshape the outside into the final dimensions, I don't ever have to worry about coming through. Second thing, it drives a lot of the weight of the piece towards the bottom where it needs it from the support when you set it down. A little bit more stuff down here means a little bit more stable when you set the piece down. Okay, so it's hollow time. So let's see what I can do with the gouge. Probably not much, but I could. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I can get some stuff out of here. What's wrong with this picture? Tool rest is too high. My handle was not horizontal. I get the wiring out of the way. This is convenient. I'm not going to gouge my elbow. How many turners do you see that have little nicks marks? You know where that all comes from. Yeah, I get a lot of this. Be with you in a second. I got a lot of it. Let's see how deep I am. Yeah, I got to go deeper. Now this is camphor. Cuts real easy. Better tools than this would be a round shallow gouge. Shallow fruit gouge. Let's get this edge cleaned up. Go to the center. That's pretty close to all I need. Okay. Now I can make that nicer in there, and I do need to do that. Round nose scraper is always a tool that I use here. The inside is finished. Oh, there's a little knot in the bottom. I don't like that. I could feel it. You won't be able to because you won't be able to get your hand in there eventually. Yeah, okay. Now I can sand that. Sometimes I do. But that cut's pretty good, and nobody's ever going to get a finger in here anyway, because I'm going to make sure the top hole is small enough that it doesn't happen. Okay, that part's done, other than final shaping and finishing. And I'm not worried about shape until I have all the pieces assembled together and I can see what the whole vessel is going to end up looking like. But that part is done, and there's two more pieces there, and you want to see the other half too? You only had to do that cut once. I'm lucky, everything's going nicely. So now let's see, we need a top for that. Oh, heck, it doesn't matter. I've got blue there. I'm going to switch pieces around here a little bit. This is a segmented ring. 12 segments. Made specifically for the top. And so I'm going to use this piece. I just switched them around. Now if I was home, I'd go to the bandsaw and I'd knock these corners off. I just don't like turning big corners. But I'm not there, and I'm not going to go to the bandsaw. That's not where I want it. The all clear? Good. That's nice. High speed. Very light. Not quite round, but that's close enough. face is not perfect because I can feel it vibrating. Now I know I'm only going to glue the edge. I can cut down the amount of work I have to do to get this flat by taking some of this out. I'm never going to use that anyway. So now when I sand it flat, I got a lot less to worry about. Okay. So now, before I glue these pieces together and put these veneers in, I want to see what the vessel is going to look like. Now I'm down to beginning to look at shape a little bit. So bring my tailstock back up. This is cool. This is really cool. And I need to get rid of this and replace it with the thread adapter. Listen, I'm doing a vessel at home. I'm off and on with this thing a lot. One thing on, one thing off. Mine tends to slip a little bit sometimes. Now, I would like to see it in the order that I'm used to working, which means the base is on the headstock, the top is on the tailstock. And this purpose is simply to see what the shape is going to start looking like. And I'll lock it. A little pressure on. Now, there is the vessel in there somewhere. Somewhere. And let's turn the speed down for a minute. Okay. That's too big. Now I want to get down in there and work on that top ring also. So I'm going to shape this glue block down a little bit.
Why didn't you glue the veneers in?
There's a question.
Why are you starting to shape now before you glue the veneers in and have the whole thing on one side?
Because I haven't hollowed this piece out to match this yet. And I haven't done that because I haven't figured out what the shape is going to be. I also want to open up the neck all the way through. I'm going to do it from the inside, not from the outside. It'll be opened up and shaped before I glue the two halves together. So this is about form. I'm not going to make the bottom as small as it needs to be. I know I'm going to underestimate the bottom. And that's just simply because I want the support. Gosh, this darn thing.
Jim, there is some spray there.
Yeah, I'll get it in a minute, thank you. This is, clearly hasn't been done for a while. Okay. The only thing missing is the top three veneers. Okay, now I could round that. Maybe something like that's not too bad. It's different. Now the base is not going to be near this long, but I left enough wood to part into later on. And this has to come down. It needs a curve. Now I'll fiddle with this shape a lot. But you get where I'm going. I still can't get down in there like I'd like. Need a couple more. Oh, good. Yeah, hang on. Okay, close enough. Now, there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be cleaned up. This neck needs shape, but I'm not worried about that at the moment. Spindle work better. Okay. So far, so good, right? Now, I want to glue these together with the veneer in there, but I need to clean up the inside of this to match that. I've got a pair of calipers. The purpose of having calipers is to establish wall thickness. That's how thick the wall is. That's how thick I got to make the wall over there. This piece is done, at this point anyway. Now, I know that my wall needs to be there. Too high. A little more. I know you can't get your fingers in here, but they should match. That's it. So I've got the wall thickness right. I've got this edge flat. Now I have to hollow out the inside of this neck. How are we doing time-wise? Getting there? You gotta hurry up. Okay, down to the veneer. I'm good on the bottom side of the neck. I'm into the neck. I now got the inside of the neck done. And I'm all the way through the neck into the glue block. And the remainder of that I can do from the outside when I get the pieces glued together. A little cleanup maybe with a round nose scraper just for fun. Okay. So now, other than gluing the veneer in, and then parting this off of this faceplate, It's almost done. Put the 3 veneers in there, glue the 2 halves together, part this off. Big mass down here, and because of that big mass, I should be able to work on this a lot until I get it shaped like I'd like it to be. And then I bring the base down. Joe.
When do you kind of clean up the veneers on the inside that you're about to glue?
Oh, I did.
The ones you're about to glue in, you haven't glued in yet. You're adding three veneers.
That's true. There's several ways I do it, and one of the ways is to glue the veneers onto here, put it in the press, and then come in here. Let me see if I can show you. Here it's glued on the other side, but it's the same idea. You glue it on,
Clean it up.
and then clean it up before I glue it. Yeah. In this case, I've glued it onto the other side, but the effect will be exactly the same.
It's hollow in the middle behind that.
This is hollow all the way through, right? This is Joel's question, but with the piece glued on the other side. So, okay. Do I want to try to save that or not? Well, if I try to save it, it'd be kind of fun if I could use it again. Chances are probably pretty good that I can't, but I use my veneer cutting tool, skew chisel, a little low. Now we take the long point, it's done. Now I have at home tools to be able to extract that. Okay, well, you know it comes out. I have some dental tools that work really good on cleaning. I just reach in and grab it and pull it back out again. So I've got to get the edge inside cleaned. Done. Other than extracting that piece that I've got wedged in there. Really, I have a dental tool. That's the only way I can get them out of there is pull them. But that edge is clean, and that's how I do that. Yeah, it'll. Just got to get it out of there, that's all. Well, okay, the pieces all get glued together. So here's a piece. One step farther, I parted off from the other faceplate. I've finished the shaping, other than the base is not done. And all I've done is left with finishing now. God. I'm going to go to my shallow fluted gouge. And I'm going to bring the base down to where it needs to be. That looks about right. So before I go any farther, I'm going to take my parting tool, not cut it off. I'm marking the bottom of the base by reducing it some. And what I can tell, whether my angle is continuing all the way or whether it has a problem that needs to be cleaned up. And there's almost always a little bit of a flare at the bottom somehow or another. I see it. Didn't take any more than that to do it. So now we're down to finishing time. And we go to my finishing stuff, starting off with sanding. I have 2 strips of sandpaper, 80, 220. 80 is for shaping. Blending edges together, taking out tool marks. And once I think I like it, go to the 220. Yeah. I'm just really good at sanding. Okay, the other thing I do is I have a reciprocal sander here, which I always use. I've got 320, 240, and 180. And what I'm going to do is put the 180 on here. One thing about reciprocal sanders is they randomize scratch patterns. So if there were scratch patterns, I have a whole bunch of these different ones. This is the brand I like because it's small. And that was 180. I'm going to go 240 and I'm going to stop. But in fact, it's reciprocating. Randomizes those scratch patterns. Now it doesn't work inside the neck, so I've got to just do that by hand. And because I've grown to love my CA, for finishing, in the summer I might put Minwax wipe on poly on here, put a coat on, it'll soak in like a sponge the first coat or two. I'll set it outside into my solar drying oven. It has fans connected to it also. I live in Martinez, so I got sun in the west and wind blowing, and that stuff will dry in half a day. And I can get a second coat on maybe the same day. In the winter, it's a coat a day or a coat every 2 days, depending on whether it's raining or not. And that's the way I would do it. But there is another way, which I have done on the piece sitting up there. And I'll need a glove. I'm going to do a CA finish. Ready for your exam? Okay.
Every gal here cringed a little bit.
I know.
How slow are you running there?
I don't know, really slow. Enough that it's not going to spill. This is thin CA. And what I like, it's setting off already. Camphor is a natural catalyst. Oh, it's leaching right through some of the grain. I see bubbling it up to the surface. It's really cool. It looks like Vesuvius going off here. Now, I don't want to use the T9 on this, but I will use an accelerator simply to speed this up. $240. Yeah, it pushed right up through the fibers of the wood. The stuff coming off the sawdust you see is pretty white, and that's acrylic. Okay. Boy, I tell you, this camphor is a natural catalyst. It really, on other woods, it takes several seconds for doing. I need the accelerator to get it going. Not here. So camphor has some chemicals in it that CA glue likes. Now, typically that's several coats. And heavy sanding in between. Lots of sanding in between. I want to take this all the way back down to wood. What I'm doing is filling in all the pores. Well, that's ebony, and I'm not going to try. It doesn't take finish very well anyway. Ebony, blackwood, a lot of the rosewoods are so oily that almost any finish won't stick. CA tends to stick a little bit, but I'm not comfortable that it won't chip off. So with things of the heavy, oily rosewoods, I would just polish it as best you can. Wax at the final would give you that same feeling. I can't see the clock with my glasses on. Got about 5 minutes. I'm going to do one more coat. Actually needs 2 or 3 more coats. I think what I'll end up doing is whoever wins this, I'm going to send them home faceplate and vessel for them to continue to add another coat of CA, sand, coat, sand, until you get the finish that you like. And then polish. So I'm not going to put this last coat on because I know I'm not going to get all the coats on and stay within my time frame, but I do want to show you how I polish it. Just because after that last coat goes on, I take 4/0 steel wool and sand it down with that. Bob loves my 4/0 steel wool. That's his favorite stuff. And that will dull any finish that you have on there. But it smooths it up. It's like a bunch of little microplanes working. And then, ooh, doesn't go on smoothly. Then I will buff it. And my first buff is called Tripoli, which is a mineral that's mined actually in Missouri. It's a clay. But this is around 800 grit. It's got a little waxy stuff in there to make it stick. It comes in bars, look like this. One of the problems with buffing is too much stuff. Don't want to put too much on. So in fact, I've got it here on the faceplate, gives me a handle. I'm sorry?
What speed?
Oh, I don't know.
Fast or very fast?
Yeah, about 1,500 it says. Now let me just stop. at this point. And hope that the camera can catch this. Can you get it real tight? Can you see that the top and the bottom look different? Because I didn't it didn't buff beyond here. This is not buffed yet. But you can see the shininess there. Okay, let's finish the buffing on this one, then do the last one. The Tripoli isn't the final. It'll leave it kind of matte sometimes. I like it at this point because I have all these handholds. It's on the faceplate. Many times I part it off after I finish buffing. So there's that. And then the one that brings it up is called White Diamond. And I do not know what the material is, but I do know it's a finer grit. We have all these buffs here in the classroom. I think we use them in the pen turning sometimes for people to smooth it up. I'm going to go faster on this one because I want the buff to feel harder to the surface of what I'm doing. Here's the white diamond stuff. So, not complete from a lot of stages, but we have an adequate finish on it. It has irregularities in the surface I can see from the light shining on it, which means it needs to be sanded down flat to the grain of the wood again. And once it's sanded down, then another coat of finish goes on. The goal is like filling. Okay, you have potholes in your street at home. When the city comes around to do it, first thing they do is fill the potholes. Then they put the pavement down. I'm filling potholes. So as soon as the potholes are there and the surface is level, I can put one more coat on, and that coat then will give me that glassy-like finish. So whomever wins this will need to take a look at this and say, what do I need to do next? And what I would do would be to go to 220 or 320 sandpaper, reciprocal sander if you have one, belt sanding is just fine, and another coat of thin CA glue. Now it's not going to flame up like it did before because the surface is sealed and now it's plastic on plastic, so it won't do like it did. And take it to where they want, and then simply come in with a parting tool at an angle towards the center and part it off. This vessel gave me a lot of headaches. This is the vessel from Heck. I couldn't get it to run smoothly. It's bolted on here nice and tight, but it wobbled. I finally took it home to try to fix it. Broke the neck off yesterday. The other faceplate wouldn't thread right. Broke the neck off, added a new neck. That's what I did yesterday. So fixing these things is not a big deal. And then, because it still wobbled on the faceplate, I've CA'd glued this thing all the way around here. This thing will never come off of here now. So whoever gets this, bring me back the faceplate. Do not try to take this off. It's not going to happen. I mean, it's there for permanent. So in essence, that is many of the steps in doing what I call a transitional vessel, which basically is a piece of scrap wood, typically a very nice featured wood, a segmented ring of which if you make one and do a good job, you can do 3 or 4 of these vessels without having to go back and do it all over again. And I like doing these things, and to me, I can start off in the morning and get one done in a day with breaks going into my computer while I'm waiting for glue to set. John?
Do you ever use carnauba?
When I get done with this thing, I do wax it. I don't use carnauba because I don't like that It doesn't shine the way I like it to. I use a microcrystalline wax. The American version is called Renaissance. Polishes up really nice. I like it because not only adds to the shine, it also adds to the feel. And when you give this to somebody to pick it up, they're going to do this. And if it feels really great on the fingers, that's nice. It's nice. So I use the Carnauba. I actually am using things called arbor wax, which comes from New Zealand and is no longer available in this country. But I have several bottles of it for lifetime supply. And one last question. Going once, twice, number?
Number 23 is Joe Dahl.
Oh, we got to have another drawing. Good. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you, Jim.
That was fun.